What is the craziest encounter of rich kid syndrome that you have experienced? I lived with 5 guys, and I was the only one whose parents weren't millionaires. Not close at all. They never cleaned. About once a month I would deep clean the house, but 2 days later there was garbage and food on the floor. I found out they all told their parents the poor kid made all the messes when one of their moms came by to scream at me. A guy I met in my early 20s was the richest person I've ever known. His dad was CFO for a big bank, but died when my friend was 14. He grew up in a massive mansion, had his rent paid for in a luxury rental building, and had unlimited funds for drugs. Eventually, his mom forced him to go to rehab, which he did for a couple of months. One day, while he was at rehab, my roommate got a call from him. He said he's outside, and didn't know where else to go. He had been cut off from his money, knew that we had an extra room, and asked if he could stay with us while he learned basic life skills, getting a job, buying groceries, cleaning, budgeting, etc. We let him, against our better judgment. About a month in, he had managed to stay sober, keep a job, and not be such a parasitic piece of sh. His mom thought he was doing better too, so she reconnected him to his money. His whole attitude and demeanor completely changed. All of a sudden it's I don't have to stay in this shitty apartment, living like I'm poor. I don't even have to stop doing drugs. I've got my money back. He left right before rent was due, and basically told us to F ourselves. 2 months later, he had the exact same situation happen. His mom cut him off again, forced him to go to rehab. He left again and called us, but this time we figured he'd rather not live in our sh-tier apartment living like he's poor. Not scathing like most of the ones on here. I grew up attending a private school in a developing country, so a lot of my classmates were in the 1% of the country. Whenever we'd be swimming in the school pool, one friend of ours in particular would always remark that swimming is more fun if the pool has a current or waves. To which I had no idea what he was talking about and generally thought he was just being imaginative. One day he invited me over to his house for swimming, and he had a 50-foot indoor pool that generated a current/waves. He wasn't lying. They are a lot more fun. A consulting manager I worked with was literally Stifler. Even looked like him. He was a Harvard grad. Dad was an exec at a huge consulting firm. Smart, but incredibly ditzy, and trying really hard to be normal. He walked into work one morning and asked one of his trainees if they got paid this week, because he literally couldn't see the difference in his bank account. My college roommate's mom gave him $1,400 for the weekend just randomly. He blew through the whole thing by Saturday, asked his mom for more money, and was screaming at her because she promised $1,400 for the weekend, and he spent most of what she gave him on Friday, which isn't a part of the weekend. Knew a trust fund girl whose dad gave her the money to start a company. She lost it when she went on vacation for 6 months and forgot she was supposed to pay her employees all the time. She assumed they would not get paid for 6 months and be there when she got back. I quizzed her on this for a few minimum, and it was clear she had no idea what a job was. Look up Corona Del Mar high school cheating scandal. Happened at my school. Parents paid around $50,000 a piece to have a tutor bug the school computers and change students' grades. They all lawyered up big time when it came out, and all the kids got off free and all made it into their top 3 schools. Edit. I would also like to add that this made the news, and all the parents whined that their children were innocent and just had a bad tutor. Had a girl I went to school with, total 4 brand new cars, think Range Rover, Escalade, etc. I was also in a class with this girl when the teacher handed out papers that needed to be signed by a parent, and she signed it herself and tried to turn it in the same period as it was handed out, and freaked out when the teacher wouldn't accept it. Kids who would talk sh and pick fights and then turn around and say, "If you touch me, my dad will sue." There are a lot more. I actually have a bit of a different story than most of these. Met a friend in Econ 101 on my first day. Pretty humble kid and all around good guy, so we got along well and were in the same study group. Turns out, kid's dad owned like a supermarket chain in HK, and his mom is a managing director at a hedge fund on mainland China, and they were sh loaded. He never let it show though, and I only found out after about 3 to 4 months of knowing him. His parents put him in boarding school when he was a kid, but he said it was actually pretty tough since the school gave 0 F's about privilege. Classes were like 1 teacher to every 3 kids and they were hardcore. They eventually sent him overseas for high school in this really upscale place in North Carolina for 4 years. He was one of the most well-mannered kid I knew in college and super humble. Got straight A's throughout college and made me pay attention too, since I was prone to slacking. I ended up doing an internship in my junior year with his mom's fund and she wrote me a letter of recommendation later on to help me get a job. We still keep in touch occasionally and he's working for a bank in HK now, pretty much following his mom's footsteps. Still come by New York to visit every year and we usually have dinner with Usos. It's really weird cause I see these kids at school driving Audis / BMWs and this kid is just there to study like everyone else, even though his parents might be the most loaded people I've seen at the school. This happened a couple of weeks ago at the Infiniti dealership. I was in the waiting room with a very well dressed lady for our loaner cars. She left the waiting room to look at her loaner and came back crying. She said she drives a fully loaded QX80 and they gave her a QX60 with nothing in it. I said sorry that happened and asked how long she was going to have the loaner for. She said a couple of hours. I wanted to tell her to suck it up but instead I sat there quiet thinking how life must be easy for her to cry over a loaner car. A friend I met at uni flew from Auckland to London for a week to go shopping. Clothes were cheaper in London, so to him it made sense. His parents were from Singapore and had no idea just how much cheaper cars were in New Zealand. So when he said he needed $70k for a Toyota Corolla they gave him the money and he bought a used BMW M3. When he went home for the summer he asked if I could mind the car for him. Given his dad had pretty much cut him off at that point he just said I had to pay for insurance on it and I could treat it like my own. But as a 19-year sharing a flat and barely getting by there was no way I could cover the cost of insurance, let alone petrol. I used to have a friend who would constantly say I love when my dad gives me money. And if I ask for a certain amount of money my parents always give me $50 extra. This girl then bought her apartment boasting about it on Facebook and how proud she was of herself, how at 23 she was able to afford a home at such a young age all on her own. Still makes me want to faceplant into a pile of jagged rocks. Dad bought his college-aged daughter a house in a very nice neighborhood so that she and her friends could live rent-free while they attended university. He remodeled the entire house. In all he probably spent close to $2 million. 2 weeks after moving in, they left a candle burning while they went to the store to get snacks for a football game. Came home and the house was on fire. A month later, it was good and new for them to move back in. Not exactly rich kid syndrome, but there was this family that had 2 children who attended the elementary school that was connected to my middle school. Every day the 2 parents would leave the house and drive separately to pick up their 2 kids before returning home. I should mention at this point that they each drove a Lamborghini, one black and one orange, back to back in the pickup line to get their kids from elementary school. At first I thought they were just being showy, but then I realized that they were two-seaters, so this was really the only way to do it. Had a kid that lived across the hall from me my freshman year of college from Honduras. During one of the icebreakers after freshman move-in he leaned to me to ask if I knew when the maids came to make his bed / clean. I guess his family was very well off in his home country and the entire semester was an eye-opener for him in actually taking care of himself. There was this rich kid in our class who was literally disgusted by us buying used stuff, like computer parts, on eBay. Once during conversation I said I bought on eBay memory module for my PC, and said to me that I should have a little dignity, and if I buy used stuff I should keep it to myself. I live in a town that sits on the shore of a really big, not great, but still big, lake. My friends and I decided a few years ago to buy a boat we could take out onto the open water. None of us are poor but none of us have a shitload of extra money on the side, so we did it as cheap as we could. We bought a decent boat that was over 30 years old and spent 2 years rebuilding the engine, refinishing some of the interior, and generally getting the thing shipshape. We were super proud of the fact that we managed to get a fully functional and reliable boat together for a little under $5 grand. Here is where the story starts. We were out on the boat on a beautiful Saturday drinking beers and cruising the beaches for girls that might want to ride on our new boat. This is why any straight man owns a boat. We pulled up to a beach and anchored, and eventually a few girls waded out to us to see if they could have a couple beers. One thing led to another and they were climbing aboard to head out for a spin. This is when I noticed one of the girls was not really excited to be on the boat. We got to the middle of the lake and started swimming off the boat, having a good time, except for that one girl. My friend asked her what was wrong. She replied, "I don't even feel safe on this piece of shit. That's my grandmother's island over there. Drop me off now." We were hurt that we had put so much effort into the boat and she dismissed it as a piece of garbage, but whatever, it is kind of a beater. We dropped her off on the island. The dock had over $5 million in boats parked at it. The girl sucked, but grandma was awesome. She brought us all ashore for beers and food and berated her granddaughter for being such a snob. Little old lady, 80 plus, lives out there alone all summer. We go back to the island all the time to help granny with the yard work and such, in exchange for hanging out on a private island, but I haven't talked to the granddaughter since. Please like and subscribe for more Reddit videos.